Hey, it's Avi from JustWriteMusic.com. It is an honor to have you with me here today. You notice we're back in the computer screen today, and because I want to go over a question that you may have asked yourself, or I know that a lot of people have asked themselves, and I myself had to ask and go through Logic Pro versus GarageBand. Is it actually worth the money? Before we get started, hit the subscribe button and bell below for more videos helping you get everything out of the way so you can just write music. Woof, gross. I hate it, but it kind of sounded cool, maybe? I don't know, let me know. So GarageBand and Logic are two sides of the same coin, much like iMovie and Final Cut Pro, but as the Pro suffix in the name implies, they are geared towards professionals. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm guessing you kind of know what these programs do and what they're for. You're just probably trying to decide between them, whether or not that $200 price tag is worth it. It probably is. Also, just in case it needs to be said, both of these programs require a Mac. So the first thing I want to bring up is the interface. And my biggest gripe with GarageBand are the smart controls. The smart controls are just a window that pops up in the bottom part of the arrangement here. You can get to them by clicking this over here, and this is kind of connected to the edit window over here. They're both these little bottom parts. Now, so far, this interface, it's nice. It's nice, it's pleasing. It's pretty good. It's not super overwhelming. If I was a beginner, I would be into this for sure. So where does the problem lie? Now, these smart controls, as they call them, just aren't that smart. They do give you a range of things to do, and I think this makes sense, especially for GarageBand, because they are really pushing you. By they, I mean Apple. They're really pushing you towards their preset and their virtual instruments that come with them, of which, oh my God, look at all these that you get. That's all free. This is a free program. That's amazing. So the problem is, though, it's just one way of doing things. And in Logic, I don't use them, like ever, at all, because there's almost always a better way of doing something, except for maybe using this virtual drummer guy. This is kind of a new thing. It's really great. The virtual drummer is fantastic, and this is the only way to control it, so you're kind of forced to use it. Now, if we pan over here to a Logic project, here is the virtual drummer again. I kind of love that we were just in this. And you see a lot of the same things, but there is a slight difference here. You can take it was in the details. The devil's in the details. Oh my God. So it has this details option that you can kind of pull and push the beat, add some more ghost notes, and have like some more hi-hat control. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. But as you can tell from the other part of the interface here, there's a lot more going on. Going back to GarageBand really quick, if you're clicked in on an instrument, you can see what effects are there and even click into it for more options. So especially here, going back to the smart controls, the other way you can bring up the smart controls, by the way, is by hitting the B key, just like that. Now, if you go in, we do have these plugins, but they kind of want to bring your attention to the controls here and the EQ here, and use all of these essentially. They really want you to use them. They don't want you editing things in the plugins themselves, or at least that's how it seems to me. But if you go down into this, you can actually go into the EQ plugin, just like you can in GarageBand. Here is the equivalent in GarageBand, right? It looks pretty much the same. There's just more information here, more ways to look at and to understand the signal in Logic. I really, really don't like this, though, because it kind of forces you to do things the way Apple wants you to do things instead of the way audio engineers tend to do things. And I know we're not audio engineers, but we have to think like audio engineers if we want to have, passable sound, listenable sound, and audio quality. When you're dealing especially with actual audio, you're going to be going and using the plugins here. And look, it is similar, right? And in GarageBand, you can go here and add plugins. You can add, let's say I wanted to add my Ozone 7 equalizer. I can't because it's not authorized. But I can if I wanted to authorize it. I can load this. I can load my Ozone 7 EQ in GarageBand, which is great. But I don't think a lot of people using GarageBand will also have Ozone. I just don't think that's a thing. But when we're dealing with audio in most other DAWs, including Logic, you're going to be using these plugins within their actual plugin interface, right? So it doesn't make sense to me for them to be pushing the smart controls so much like they do. Like a true DAW, there's more than one way to do just about anything in Logic Pro. Just like there's more than one way to support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Now, this is a nightmare. This is overwhelming, just looking at all the tracks and all the buttons, but this is just a reality of making music in the box and on a computer. By contrast, though, GarageBand does make this look rather pleasing aesthetically. This is really nice and easy. Everything's big. It's very uncluttered. I think this is an extremely useful presentation especially for beginners, where overwhelm can so easily derail just about anybody. Logic Pro, out of necessity, puts function over form. The busyness of fully featured DAWs can be anxiety-inducing, like, whoa, my God, look at that, versus, And of course, there's more tracks and more things going on, but I think that has value still, which is why I kept it in the script. Now, the next thing I want to bring up, and the biggest difference here, honestly, are the stock plugins between GarageBand and Logic. And this is really what gets me, so much so that I literally rewrote this entire script to make this stock plugin section a big ticket item, because this is a travesty. Back in the day, the stock plugins in GarageBand were essentially the same as Logic. Sure, there were some limits, but they looked more or less the same and allowed for a seamless transition, just like the EQ, right? This is very nice. This looks exactly the same. If I were moving from GarageBand to Logic like I did, I would feel pretty comfortable using this EQ. That's kind of great. Amp Designer is another fantastic use of this system, right? If we go here, I can add right here, connect a guitar or bass. Yes. Perfect. Okay, we get the smart controls. Okay, but we can go into the actual Amp Designer plugin. We can do that and go through it like that. That's super, super useful. I just want to know why it stopped there, because this was a choice. For example, the stock Logic noise gate. Yeah, it's a little crowded. Let's bring that up. Here's the noise gate. Boom. That's a lot. If you don't really know what you're looking at, if you don't know how this works. As a beginner, when I first moved to this, this has gotten better over the years, but it certainly wasn't much better. And if we go over to the noise gate here in GarageBand, that's all we get. And arguably maybe that's all you need, but I'm not going to make that argument, and I, in fact, am going to say no, I don't think that's all you need. They get rid of any visuals whatsoever and just give us a single threshold knob? Like, what? What is this? It's the same thing with the compressor. This is another huge failure. Like, it's better, I guess, but, like, we've definitely got more. We definitely have more parameters than the noise gate, but we have no idea how much actual gain reduction that we're using. It just doesn't show us. We have to do it by ear alone. And some audio guys will say, good, learn to use your ears. But to them I say, do all of your plugins really have zero visual guidance? Really, all of them? Probably not. It's important to know what you're doing, not just how it sounds. It's important to know the sonic implications of what you're doing, but it's also important to have some type of number or anything to go by. I mean, we have the numbers here, but the visual reduction of actual gain reduction, that's an important metric that basically any compressor worth its salt will have. And I don't know why Apple decided to neuter this stock compressor, because their stock compressor is it's great. You have so many options here. And yes, again, all the knobs, yes, overwhelming, absolutely. But there is a middle point between this and this. Right? Thankfully, third-party plugins are supported in GarageBand, which is the saving grace here. This is the thing that makes it usable, in my opinion. You can go and get your Waves plugins and have that awesome SSL sound. You can do that, right? You can pull up the Tube Screamer if you want, just in GarageBand. This is fantastic. This is the saving grace for sure. So those are the stock plugins, really. Honestly, all of these just kind of, they're not great, but they all have this similar sort of thing. And there used to be some plugins in Logic that had a vibe to like that too, where you just go right to the numbers, right to the little sliders like that. But those came as optional. They weren't the default. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of Logic versus GarageBand, whether or not it's worth the money, is just the capabilities. And this is an obvious one, sure, but it is pretty important to talk about, I'd say. In Logic Pro, you get the same features. You get everything you get in GarageBand, but it's all just 10x. It's all so much bigger and grander. GarageBand can perform the basics of most audio tasks, but fails to go deeper. And I think this is by design, right? We don't want to go too deep in GarageBand. It's trying to get us to sort of vibe with the basics and get to know how to use those. So when we do graduate to Logic, and that is the whole point, right? To kind of point us to graduating to Logic. It's showing us limitations that we're ultimately going to need to transcend. This is mostly fine because it's a stepping stone and it's free, right? So that's cool. It's not like they're asking for $100 for GarageBand, then giving it this like insane limitations, and then asking $200 for Logic. That would be, that's some Avid type stuff. Oh, geez. However, there are a few omittances that I definitely take issue with. There doesn't seem to be a dedicated mix window outside the tracks or arrangement area. And what I mean by that is the actual, like, the mixer, what looks like a mixing board. If we go to view here, we can show the mixer just like that. It shows us there's both a version of it here on the bottom. You can see this just looks like a standard mixing board that you might see in any Pro Studio. And what you can also do is hit Command 2, I believe, and it gives us this awesome window version of it, which I find super, super helpful when working with big projects and going through like the whole production process, because I can just use this as the main area as the tracks and editing area, and then go into this for the actual mixing and kind of let my ears do a lot of the work, especially with leveling. But that's super important. I think it's really, really important, and most, if not all DAWs digital audio workstations are going to have a window like that. GarageBand doesn't. It just doesn't, and that sucks. I think that window is super important. It used to have it. I believe there used to be a mix window like this. I might be wrong, but my memory might be failing me, but I don't think so. I believe there used to be a mix window, and that's how I learned how to like mix my first couple of songs with the GarageBand mix window, and now it's gone. I had to, you have to get Logic in order to get that. And maybe I'm wrong. Is there a way to, view? Nah. They don't even have one, inside. Like if I hit X, nothing happens. They don't even have one inside the lower edit windows here. That's really sad. I think that sucks. Secondly, if you're recording directly into an interface like a lot of guitarists and bassists do, there aren't any latency controls at all. They're not, nowhere. Nothing. We got feedback protection, we got monitoring over here. This is where they would be, right? But they're not. There's nothing. This is baffling to me because they include their pretty fantastic amp simulator, right? This amp designer is pretty solid. I mean, the crunchy tones have always been a little bit wonky for Amp Designer, but the clean tones are pretty great for what you get, and for what you got it for free. So that's fantastic. But so many of these come preloaded with all these effects. Look down here. They have all these effects that come preloaded on there, and all these effects do create latency, but we don't have any latency controls. Now, it seems like there's a low latency mode that's built into the program and on by default, but latency can still happen, especially if you're dealing with bigger projects, and not having some type of built-in control that you can control, that you can toggle on and off, just seems silly to me. I don't know. This kind of thing goes across the board. And again, it could be argued that that's the whole point, but it didn't used to be like this. I went through the process of starting in GarageBand and graduating to Logic. I don't know how many times I'm going to do the swipe graduation thing, but it's working, I guess. Feature sets were taken away and functionality limited by design. And I think in some ways that's okay, but in the ways that count, that like actually are like making it a little bit harder to make that transition, that's when it doesn't really make sense to me, because they want that transition to be smooth, right? This is all with the aim to get people to pay that $200 to grab Logic. It's Apple, so it's expected, but it still doesn't feel great. And all that being said, GarageBand is still completely free on a Mac and delivers a robust and streamlined experience that's really, really helpful for beginners. It was for me, and I would imagine it would still continue to be. It gives you a sneak peek of all the things that's possible with Logic, and it does a good job at decreasing overwhelm. That last bit is a really big deal because fully featured DAWs are loaded with features and parameters that I mean, look at this. Even after a decade of using this program, I still don't know how to fully take advantage of it. Especially when you get into like the event thing. Like, oh, no. This thing? Nope, that's the loops. This. Like, come on. I don't want to. What? No, thanks. Having an easy and free tool like GarageBand to play with offers a very low barrier to the mildly curious, and that kind of accessibility is enormously helpful. Okay, so those are the 3 biggest differences between Logic and GarageBand. If you still aren't sure if you should drop that $200 on Logic, I'll tell it to you straight right here. If you're a complete beginner and haven't ever written or recorded music on a computer, go get GarageBand. Even if you feel like this is your calling and you'll write music for the rest of your life, it's worth taking it easy and taking it slow here. This is a robust, free program that can get you up and running pretty quickly. Take advantage of it. It's pretty great. That being said, if you do have some experience writing and recording on a computer in another program, or have already been using GarageBand for a while, ask yourself, what are the 3 things that GarageBand or your other DAW can't do that you really need? If you can name 3 specific things, go grab it. Be sure to leave a comment down below with whether or not you'll take the plunge, and include those 3 specific things if you want. That'd be totally cool. If you're looking for some proven tools to level up your melodies, go grab a copy of my free guide, 7 Ways to Write a More Effective Melody. I literally ripped half of these tips off of my teacher, who's a working composer and taught everywhere from Juilliard to Curtis and went to Northeastern and all the things. So head to justwritemusic.com and go grab your free copy. There's a link down in the doobly-doo. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for being here and for hanging out. It means a ton. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm, and don't forget to be awesome. Peace out.